Hi everyone, my name is Micah McLean and I'm the creator of Micah McLean Talks. My podcast with Samir Patel, the chief executive of Comic Relief, is sponsored by Port Royal Patties. Please remember to like, share, subscribe and comment, and I hope you enjoy the interviews. Thank you.
Millions of people across the country, they're at a breaking point, struggling to afford the bare essentials.
Thank you, Samir, so much for coming on the platform. You are the chief executive of Comic Relief. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Please tell us about your early life growing up and your journey to becoming chief executive of Comic Relief.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in the US, in a town called Atlanta, a city called Atlanta. And my career has mostly been around digital communications, internet. I kind of spent my time in the dot-com days back in New York in the late 90s, have worked for a lot of agencies and consultancies. But I also took a detour and did some filmmaking. So I ran a video production company for a number of years and, sort of shot videos all over the world. Then I worked for an agency called Blue State, very progressive values-led agency. They did Barack Obama's campaigns in 2008, 2012. And at Blue State, I worked with a lot of nonprofits. So big global nonprofits like Amnesty International, Oxfam, UNHCR. So I had worked with the nonprofit sector as a sort of consultant. And then after 8 years there, was thinking about moving over to an organization, not as a consultant, but actually to be somewhere where I could see change through over time and not just dip in and out as a consultant. And I saw the Comic Relief job and, of course, know about the brand. And so, decided to join Comic Relief. And I moved to the UK in 2010. And I'm now a British citizen and live here with my wife and 2 kids in East London.
Thank you so much for that. And even following on from that, throughout your career, you must have had many barriers and challenges. So please can you tell us about what some of those were and how you overcame them to get where you are?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that, of course, everyone faces barriers throughout their career. But I think one of the barriers for me has just been, myself, my own self-doubts, my questions about if I can actually, do something or achieve something. Everyone is sort of hard on themselves and puts pressure on themselves. And so I've had to learn throughout my career of sort of how to manage, the pressure, how to manage the stress of the workplace, how to balance work and life. And I think I've gotten better at that throughout my whole career, which I think has also enabled me to progress. And I think any kind of external barriers, I think they're typical ones around, your experience or perceptions of who you are. But I'd like to think that I've overcome most of those. So I think that a lot of times what holds me back is probably myself more than anything else.
Thank you. And just quickly following on from that, how did you overcome that self-doubt? Because that's a barrier that lots of people face.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure I still deal with it, and I always will. So I think part of it is just recognizing that, work and your career is very important, but it's not everything. And when you remember that everyone you interact with and deal with are people just like you with their own doubts and issues, and people are worried about themselves and, their own self-belief and so forth. They're not sitting around judging you. And so I think there's something about just putting things into perspective, being very empathetic to both other people, but also to yourself. I think that's the hardest thing, is to be kind to yourself. And I think having kids has also helped me sort of understand that at a deeper level. And certainly after I had kids, I think it put a lot of things in perspective for me. And I was able to kind of see some of these barriers or see some of these doubts as something that don't have to define everything or how I operate.
And following on from that, Comic Relief was set up in 1985 in response to the famine in Ethiopia. Please tell us about the aim, scope, and impact of Comic Relief since it was founded.
Yeah, well, 38 years we've been around as a charity. We've raised over $1.5 billion in that time. And what I would say is the thread through all of that, when we've gone through different phases and done different things, but the thread through all of that work is how we can really use humor and popular culture to engage people, to care about helping someone else. That's what we've always done. We've always been astounded by the kind of legendary generosity of the British public and people's ability to give and want to help someone else out. We will always believe in that, and that kind of holds true time and time again. And so it's really about so that thread about making things engaging and making things fun has been consistent throughout. But certainly through that time, we've also evolved. We've evolved, where we work, how we do our funding, how we do our storytelling. And it's amazing. In that time, with that 1.5 billion raised, we've benefited over 38 million people directly. We've reached, an additional 191 million people. All of this is the funding that we raise goes out to grants to support lots of small charities, both here in the UK and internationally in many different countries. So we're really proud of what we've accomplished.
And even following on from that, you're about to announce a partnership with the Evening Standard, where you'll be delivering your winter survival appeal. So what are the key aims and objectives of this initiative?
Well, right now the situation's critical. I think we all sort of know that. We read the news, millions of people across the country, they're at a breaking point, struggling to afford the bare essentials for themselves and their children. So, this appeal, just like the name suggests, Winter Survival Appeal, it's really about ensuring everyone has the support and access to essentials to meet the most basic needs and help alleviate the impact of poverty that we're seeing all around us. And so our priority for this appeal is tackling food insecurity, early childhood development, really helping children and young people who are facing financial hardship and even homelessness, creating safe and inclusive spaces. So lots of different areas. And it's just making sure that we can do what we can. We can use our brand and profile. We can use the reach of Evening Standard to raise as much attention and get as many people out there to really want to help other people who will be struggling during what's going to be a really difficult winter.
Thank you. And following on from that, what do you think the government can do to support Britons that are going to be most affected by the crisis that's about to take place?
Well, I think everyone can be doing more. I think government can be doing more. I think corporations can be doing more. People urgently need support. And I don't think it's political to say that we have to look after the most vulnerable in our society. And so I think, for the government to continue to see aid as important, and for everyone, all types of organizations, institutions, corporations, I think everyone coming together is what's needed to really look out for those in society who need our help. And so everyone's got to rally together to help everyone out.
Thank you. And following on from that, this year, Comic Relief's TV appeal raised 35.3 million. How does Comic Relief use the money raised to benefit communities in the UK and across the world?
Yeah, so to raise that kind of money, during a cost of living crisis was just really extraordinary. We're always impressed. We're always grateful for the amount raised. We never really take it for granted. And the money raised will help support people. It will help change people's lives. And we're talking about people struggling with cost of living crisis, homelessness, mental health problems, food poverty, both here in the UK as well as internationally and around the world. And so currently we support about 290 organizations working in different communities. We have about, over 160 million out in active sort of grants and funding to these organizations. And so, it's really about those things I mentioned around the winter appeal as well. But not only are we trying to help alleviate the urgency of situations that people are facing in communities everywhere, but it's also about making sure that we're strengthening some of these small community-based organizations who are closest to the issues, closest to the communities that need help, so that they can sustain and they can become stronger organizations over time. So that's what the money goes towards.
Thank you. And following on from that, in 2020, Comic Relief made a decision to stop sending celebrities such as Ed Sheeran to African countries. What was the reason behind that decision?
Well, we were called out publicly for sending celebrities to Africa and perpetuating certain stereotypes and narratives around Africa, and I think rightly so. We really wanted to modernize our storytelling and film. So when we made that announcement, that was really part of our commitment to kind of shifting the narrative in our storytelling, making sure that we have greater awareness of international issues, and most importantly, we're providing a platform for local leaders and communities to lead their own stories. So it's about working with local filmmakers, making sure that people are owning their own story, that people can tell their stories, and we can use our platform to bring those stories out into the world. So we're really committed to that. We've been working that way for a long time. And, I think we're on a constant journey. We'll continue to evolve based on what our kind of funded partners and what we're hearing from communities on the ground, what they need. We'll continue to make sure that we put that front and center. And it's important to note it's not just about our storytelling. It's also about us as an organization and how we work and how we fund. So, even when we're providing grants and we're funding organizations, we really want to take a localized approach where we're making sure that those organizations can tell us what they need, that they can make decisions, that we're trusting them to essentially, look after their communities in the way that they feel is best.
Thank you. And often chief executives have to work long hours. So what are your hobbies that you engage in when you want to relax?
Yeah, well, my hobbies tend to be centered around my kids because I have two young kids, a 5-year-old and 2-year-old. So as you can imagine, that takes up a lot of energy and attention. So yeah, my way of unwinding is to play with them, to kind of see the world through their eyes, to, take them to different activities. So it is lots of kids' museums and play spaces and things like that. And yeah, other than that, I enjoy a bit of exercise when I can and reading books, but I would say it's very focused on the family and kids at the moment.
And just quickly, what are your favorite books?
So yeah, I read a lot of nonfiction books. I've just read Permacrisis, which is by Gordon Brown, and another author that he worked with. I enjoy sort of sci-fi books, things that are very kind of escapist. This is not a recent book, but I read a sci-fi trilogy by Margaret Atwood, called I think it was called Year of the Flood, and one was called Oryx and Crake. So yeah, a real range of things. But I would say, as I don't have tons of time, it probably tends to be a bit more on the nonfiction side because it's a bit faster for me to read at the moment.
Thank you. And following on from that, Comic Relief was investing in different projects to tackle racial inequality, which received widespread praise. Please share with us just some of the projects the charity has been delivering in this area.
Yeah, so I mentioned how we're doing work on our funding side to really take a more localized approach. And so it's worth mentioning our partnership with FCDO. We've been working with the UK government on our international work since 2009. We've funded projects across sub-Saharan Africa, helping improve the lives of over 8 million people. But we also have, as part of that partnership, something called the Shifting the Power program. And this really aims to build a more localized and people-led program that basically takes the power closer to communities. It invests in locally developed solutions to create more tangible and sustainable change. It is a different way of funding. It is a long-term program over 10 years where we can really help these organizations create sustained change. So that's really exciting, and it's quite based on a lot of progressive funding principles that we feel really strongly about. And the learnings from this program will be useful for us and hopefully the wider sector. It's a different way of doing funding. It's also worth calling out our Global Majority Fund. So we set this up during the pandemic in partnership with a number of partners to help diverse communities who are really disproportionately impacted by COVID in the UK. So since 2020, we've awarded over 6 million in funding. That's helped deliver 980 grants to projects. That's helped over 175,000 people across the UK. Most importantly, this is about grassroots projects that provide critical services to diverse communities who were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So we're really proud of that work, and that fund continues to have a big impact.
Thank you. And following on from that, just quickly, Sky News reported that BAME people hold just 4.6% of the UK's most powerful roles. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are that it's low. It's not proportionate with the population. I think we all know this. So yeah, I think that, we've seen in the past few years because of Black Lives Matter, because of George Floyd and other reasons, there is a greater push now, a greater recognition of the diversity that's needed across the UK and workplaces, but also just of the systemic inequalities that exist in all of the organizations and institutions that are around us. And that's, of course, not going to change overnight, but the important thing for me is that we see progress happening. So yeah, I feel like that number should and could and hopefully will be higher. But it's not just about the diversity. It's also about all of the issues around that, the inclusion, the sense of belonging, the things we can do to make it so that people of color have opportunities to progress and are being retained and are going into fields that they may not otherwise go to. So it's quite a widespread set of actions that are needed. But I feel like I am seeing some progress there, which is great, but there's certainly a lot more to do.
And the thing that's encouraging about you, which is also particularly why I chose you for be significant, that you're from a BAME background. So lots of young people will look up to you from those ethnic communities. So what advice would you give to young people such as myself and younger who aspire to, move up within the workplace?
Yeah, so I think we talked earlier about some of that self-doubt. And I know with a lot of the young people that I talk to, people from a BAME background, that is a constant presence. That doesn't go away. Feelings of imposter syndrome and other issues, and also just the wider inequalities that we face on a daily basis that people bring with them, to everything they do. That is really, really difficult. So I think the important thing for me is to not let that sort of cloud or affect every single thing that can happen in the workplace. The reality is, give it a shot. The reality is, talk to people. I think sharing experiences, being open and honest with your managers about what you need. I feel like this is now in a world of more diversity awareness in every workplace. This is now becoming more encouraged, and it's now becoming more commonplace. So it's important to talk and to raise things. But I also think it's important to hold your workplaces and your managers to account. And what I mean by that is asking, what is my plan for progression? What is it going to take for me to get from here to there? If those things are made clear, then really there's nothing stopping you from achieving those things. And I think for too long, we're afraid to ask those things or kind of spell those out, but you have every right to know that and to know what your path to progression is. That's really important. But yeah, at the end of the day, don't let yourself, hold you back, because that's the one thing you can control.
Thank you. And Red Nose Day is going to be on Friday, the 15th of March, 2024. What do you hope that the event will achieve this year? Next year. Sorry.
Yeah, so next year, our Red Nose Day campaign will be in March 2024. And yeah, what I hope is that it's going to help spread some joy. Again, that DNA throughout our whole history. I really hope that this campaign can raise some spirits, that we can get people to enjoy doing something funny for money, knowing they're making a difference while they're also having fun. The premise of Red Nose Day is amazing. You can sit on your sofa and have a laugh and do some good in the world. If you want to hop on one leg and do that to raise money, great. You can do whatever you want. That's the point. It can be fun. Even though the issues around us are serious and the things we're trying to address are serious, it doesn't mean we have to take ourselves seriously when we're trying to do something good for other people. So really excited for it. We have loads of exciting plans in the background, celebrity challenges, a new red nose, lots of exciting sketches. My lips are sealed at the moment. Can't reveal any of it yet, but we're really excited for it. And yeah, my hope is that it just brings a little bit of laughter and a little bit of joy in what we know are really difficult times.
The last question I'd like to ask you, just please tell us about any other projects that Comic Relief will be working on in the next couple of years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just coming up soon, we have Christmas Actually, which is a Christmas show featuring live music and performance. So a portion of the proceeds from that will go to Comic Relief. That's going to be at Royal Festival Hall, 7th to 11th of December. That's curated by Richard Curtis, who's our founder. Also, this winter, we're proud to be one of 12 charity partners taking part in Jingle Jam, which is the world's biggest gaming charity event. So that's a way that people can get involved as well and have some fun doing some gaming while raising money for charity. But yeah, beyond Winter and Red Nose Day, we're really excited that we have a new partnership with Park Run. So there will be some activity around that next year. And also, people may remember our kind of sport relief background and those campaigns and activities. So we have some exciting plans being developed for sport relief. So probably next summer. So stay tuned for that. And then we also have other areas that we'll be moving into. We'll be doing more funding around climate and figuring out what that looks like. So there's much more to come over the next few years.
Thank you so much for such a great interview, Samir. It was a real pleasure to interview.
No, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I'll be back soon with another interview on the platform. Thank you.